was taught between the age of 8 and 10, I was being taught to play classical guitar. But at the age 7, about 7, I was being taught piano from an older cousin, Clinton Shallow, who was also Zig's older brother. On the corner from my house, on weekends, there would be all of these neighborhood guitar players who used to get on in that house on the corner. They would be playing guitars all night long, So I think that would probably be the reason behind asking for a guitar. The deal was that I had to take lessons. But okay, when my mom created this idea, which was okay with me, they bought the wrong guitar. They bought the wrong type of guitar. They bought a guitar with the gut-head strings, which leaned to be a classical guitar. And so when she talked to the guitar teacher who I was going to, Mr. Brown, his name was Hamilton Brown. He, his idea was I had a classical guitar, so he's going to teach me how to play classical music. So now I'm being taught how to use this as a way of playing this instrument. So this is what I was going for. One day, this was like into my second year. I was coming up on 10. I took a shortcut, not a shortcut, but a detour from my normal route to catch the bus to go to Mr. Brown's house, which was, we stayed on Perdita Street. There was a bus stop at Galvez and Perdita. So I turned at Johnson Street, I believe that's what it was, and walked up one block. When I got to the corner of Grandview and Johnson, I heard guitars. And I said, wow. So and they were playing, some bluesy stuff, St. Louis Woman and stuff like that. I think it was St. Louis Blues, I believe was the first song I heard. So I kind of turned that corner just to go see what it was. And it was this guy named Benjamin Francis, we all know him as Papi, and his grandfather sitting on the steps playing acoustic guitars. So, and immediately the first thing I noticed was his grandfather was playing like this. I say, whoa, I'm playing the wrong music, because that's the songs I want to be playing, and his grandfather was playing like that, and I say, oh, hey, school's out. I knew that at that point that changed my whole life, Because I had learned how to play classical formula, I had always been playing bass anyway. And when I started studying with Papi from, probably 11 until I moved away from him, we would swap off. He would play guitar, but he wanted to be a bass player also. He was a bass player, not wanted to be, but he was a bass player. So, he'd play guitar for a while, then he would switch over and want to play bass, so to keep his bass chops up. So that's the way, I believe that I was playing bass from the beginning. My first band, the first band that I ever really played in as a band was with a gentleman named Herbert Wing. He had a band called the Royal Knights. And I was good. I was absolutely about 15 or so when that was going down. And he was playing fraternity houses, frat houses on Broadway. And that's how I got to meet Earl King and Benny Spellman and Ernie Cato and Tommy Ridgely, because Herbert's band would be the house band, and the frat houses would bring in different artists. The band that eventually became titled The Meters, we started playing. Art Cam got me. I was playing with Irvin Bannister and the All Stars at that time at a club called a Cindy Club on Galvez and Washington, and right off the corner of Galvez and Washington. But across the street on the corner was like a key club called Charlie's Corner, and that's where Fats Domino and all the upperclassmen would hang out at. You know, Art Neville being one of those upperclassmen. This one particular night, Fats came over and sat in. Well, Art Neville was across the street at the club with him, and Art came over. That's when Art saw me as a bass player for the first time. And at the end of after Fats had been done, Art came up to him and told me, said, "Now that's the instrument you should have been playing." I said, "Well, I've been playing it for a while, you know." And then he asked me if I wanted to gig, you know, and he said he was just ready to start a new band, and he wanted to know if I wanted to play in it. I said, I said, yeah, absolutely. And we played for about probably like 4 or 5 months with that band, and then Glenn had to go off to have a minor surgery that was going to take him out for about 10 days, 2 weekends basically. For those 2 weekends, Zig came in as the drummer. Zig at the time was playing with Deacon Jones' band. Zig came in, played those gigs, and it was like a whole different, the music just kind of like opened up into a new door, and just another doorway opened. And it was like, wow. And we ended up in the French Quarters at the Ivanhoe on Bourbon Street. Now, all the time, we didn't know it, but, you know, Alan Toussaint was peeping in the nightcap, checking us out and stuff. And on Bourbon Street, back then, you just can drive your car down Bourbon Street. The doorman used to always tell us that Alan would sit out by the curve in his Cadillac convertible and listen to us play, you know. While on Bourbon Street, Marshall Sehorn, Alan Toussaint's partner, approached us about doing some recording for Alan. Alan wanted to check the band out. You know, he said Alan had been checking the band out, but he wanted to see how we responded in the studio. And so we went into to the studio, and it was Cosmo Matassa's studio it was called Jazz City. It was a warehouse on Camp Street. We started doing these recordings with Alan behind different artists that we didn't even actually know who the artist was. We were just doing sessions behind, just doing bunches of songs. Majority of those songs ended up in Lee Dorsey's camp. But it was probably after working with Alan as a rhythm section on probably 60, 70 songs. One day Marshall Sehorn just told us, he said, "Why don't y'all just lay down some tracks? Just lay down something," you know. And so 4 songs got recorded. Sophisticated Sissy, Here Come the Meter Man, Sissy Strut, and Sehorn's Farm, the 4 original songs recorded. Marshall went out and made a deal, put that music out on Josie Records. And and the next time one day we were called, we were summoned to the studio. Thought we were going to the studio to do a session. We came to the studio. He had checks for all of us, and a contract, and a 45, saying that here's your new record. Y'all have a new album, a new record out. It's a 45, and it's going to do good. I want to say we did 3 records with Lee Dorsey. We did. There's a few names that come up. Everything I Do Gonna Be Funky. That was one of the good ones. Sneaking Salad Through the Alley, the original version, and we also did the Sneaking Salad Through the Alley with the Robert Palmer sessions. The Lady Marmalade record with Patti LaBelle. We did a record with Betty Harris. We did a couple of British artists that got sent there to Alan. We did a Canadian guy, Richard Newman, better known as King Biscuit Boy. Several projects with Earl King. Well, one really well-known one was with the Street Parade one. We did a session behind Aaron Neville, and we also did a session behind Cyril Neville. 4 songs behind Cyril, and I think it was only maybe 3 or 4 songs maybe behind Aaron. Sissy Strut, you know, the song itself, it was a series of licks, you know, 2 licks that got pieced together, and it was like the actual arrangement didn't happen, you know, like lick A and then lick B, and then, you know, we just kind of like worked at it, you know, and worked at it, and then taped it. And so as it went down, that's what it was. Well, there's one really good story about one really, really good song. The song was called Look a Pie Pie. And we were on our way going to Atlanta. We blew a piston in our station wagon. And the station wagon was making this sound. That's the sound it was making. And so, you know, and we hearing this sound after so many miles, because we had probably a good 100 miles to go, you know, on that burnt piston. So Zig started beating on the roof of the car, and Leo, and we started singing, bounce, bounce, and the engine was booked to tour, and we bounce, and we sang that for 100 miles, you know. We got to the studio, and Leo came up with the licks, the 2 licks, and the song was history.
Hey, lava, crawfish and toothfish.
They all ask for you. Zig brought that to the table, and as he recalls, his parents, they used to have house parties, and during the course of the evening, you know, at the end of the night, there was this music that would get sang. This song would be "They All Ask for You," but they used, you know, dirty words. You know, it wasn't the Monkees. You know, there would be the Monkees, you know, wrecked them. You know, so it would be, you know, but it would be, you know, instead of like we say the Monkees ask, it wouldn't be ask, it would be the other word, you know. And you know, and so that's the way that song originated in Zig's mind as he remembered it, and he taught it to the rest of us. Sissy Strut, and I think Look a Pie Pie and Dry Spell all made it over to the top 100 pop chart. All 5 or 6 of those songs rose in the R&B charts really high. There was a tour that got put together to go to Europe, but it was Dr. John, Professor Longhair, Snooks Eaglin was supposed to go, and he backed out at the airport, and the Meters. And the Meters was going to be the house band behind everybody except Professor Longhair. That was our first introduction to Europe, and Europe's first sighting of the Meters. And it was like, we opened the show, we played our gig, and the response was like, well, overwhelming. And then we brought on the other artists and stuff. At the end of the evening, there was a meet and greet for the Meters only. No one else was invited to this meet and greet. And at that point, we met the whole entire European royalty, musical royalty, from the Beatles, the Stones. At that time, it was Faces. Sylvia Neville eventually joined the Meters, and that happened because of a Rolling Stones tour that we did in '75. It was brought to us by, at the time, a tour manager named Rupert Surkoff, who had him and Marshall had been powwowed, and You know, I can't tell you exactly what it was, but the end result was that we needed a front singer to compete with the Rolling Stones. We just couldn't go and be the four of us like we've been living most of our lives already. And Rupert had the ear of Art, and as far as Art was concerned, he had been trying to move his brothers into this band from probably the second year that we were together. You know, so he wanted a Neville Brother band, but he really wanted the Meters to be that Neville Brother band. That was his dream, you know, and I can understand that. I can dig it. You know, the problem that the three of us had, was that if that was to happen, then we would no longer be the Meters. You know, we would end up being what the Neville Brothers turned into, you know, the Neville Brothers band. So that the band, we fought that idea, but doing doing 75, having Cyril come in as a conga player, and he was, at the time, he wasn't even a conga player. He wasn't a percussionist. They just, you know, he didn't want to be out there by himself without doing something. So, you know, so they settled with them playing congas, you know, and he played at the congas, and but you know, he did mostly what Rupert and them wanted him to do, is be the front man. While doing the session, the New Directions record with David Rubinson in San Francisco, Rupert Surkoff gave us a contract. It was even thicker than the first one, and wanted us to sign this contract. Well, Art signed the contract, and the rest of us didn't. And at the time, the idea was that because the Meters and the Neville Brothers combined recorded a record called the Wild Chapatulas. The Wild Chapatulas record was starting to make noise. Rupert had convinced Art that, you know, if those guys don't want to follow up, man, we can go with the Wild Chapatulas, because that's happening. This Meter stuff ain't happening right now. You know, it's like questionable. You know, although Warner Brothers had just spent a whole lot of money getting David Rubinson to be our producer, and also 2 songs on that record was already earmarked to be hit records. They was going to push them, but because we didn't sign the contract, Art quit the band. My drug abuse was absolutely known to the world. I've made many statements about it, you know, and I'm very comfortable with, you know, with the fact that I'm something like 28 years sober. I'm around it every day or every other day, you know, and I have chosen not to use it. I came home around 9 o'clock that morning. Had been out all night, hanging and running the streets and snorting cocaine, drinking alcohol. I got home. My wife needed the car to take my daughter to church. And in my stupor, I didn't really put words together, but all I could just remember was my wife saying, "Come on, Trina, let's go. We got to get out of here. Come on, let's go." And that just looped in my head. And I wasn't looping in my head that she was going to take Katrina to church. It was looping in my head that they were leaving my life. And that's, you know, that was the part that made me realize that, that, you know, this has got to end. Right after I got sober, I was playing with David Lasty in the Taste of New Orleans at a club called Storyville. And Phil Parnell, keyboard player, got a gig uptown at a club on Chapatula Street called The Absolute. And it was a restaurant that you know, wanted to put live music in there on a Saturday night, you know. And so we played one week, I believe, and the next week, the owner of the club wanted to promote the gig, and he wanted to use my name. And it was like, I was being a diplomat. And I said, no, man, this is Phil Band. You can't use my name. It's got to be Phil Parnell. And the guy said, yeah, but nobody knows who Phil Parnell is. They know who George Porter is. I said, it can't be that way. This is his band. And I was very adamant that it wasn't going to be George Porter band, the George Porter Trio. And so the guy came, he said something like, he said, oh man, you guys partners, aren't y'all running partners? And I say, hey, that's a good name, running partners, And so that's how the running partners band began. It was a trio. It was Phil Parnell, Bernard Johnson on drums, and myself. The project that we did as Geo Leo in New Orleans, that Mardi Gras, caught the eye of Quint Davis. But we got invited to play jazz, but the 2 nights before Jazz Fest, we played Jimmy's Club uptown with the keyboard player. Now that particular night, we had John Otan on keyboards rather than Targanowski. He wasn't available. John Otan played keyboards. Well, that night, Art Neville came to the club. Came out to the club, and basically it was like we start a song off. Otan would be on keyboards and Art would tap on his shoulder and say, I remember that, and he would play the song, and then he would get up and John would sit back down again, and it happened almost the whole night. Art kept tapping John on the Otan on the shoulder, and Art would sit down and play keyboards. So it actually happened at Jazz Fest when we played the gig at Jazz Fest. That Art showed up at the gig at Jazz Fest, and he sat in with thing. So after Jazz Fest had passed on, we Leo kind of said, man, we ought to start playing together again. The night before the city started a massive evacuation, I played across the street at the Maple Leaf for what they call the Midsummer Mardi Gras, I believe. And myself, Teresa Anderson, I can't remember who everybody was in the band, but we kind of played till like 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning that night. And I got home, and the air had that smell of water, and that fresh moisture, like tropical smell. I love the smell of that hurricane, the smell. And we went to bed, and I got up. No matter what time I go to bed, I'm usually up by 9:30, 10 o'clock in the morning. So I get up this Sunday morning, go downstairs, and I want to go sit out on the gazebo. I had my little tea, and I want to sit out on the gazebo in the swing. And my wife was in the kitchen cooking, and I'm sitting in the swing, swinging, and my granddaughter came out. She sat down next to me, and she looked up at me, and she said, "Grandpa, when we leaving?" And she just had that frightened look in her face, in her eyes, I say, "Right now," I've never left the city for a hurricane before, ever in my life, and but my granddaughter was afraid, and I said, "Let's go." We ended up in Tuscaloosa, and a friend of ours said the Nevilles had left that Friday night. So we were like, we did we took what normally would be 5-hour drive. It took us almost 12 hours to get to Tuscaloosa, and we stayed in Tuscaloosa, and the storm caught up with us up there. We were on Interstate 20 headed towards Charlotte. My mom called me up on the phone, and she said, "Where y'all at?" I said, "We're right outside Atlanta." She said, "We had just got we passed through Birmingham and gotten on 20." And she said, "I said, we're not far from Atlanta." She said, "Turn around, come back." I said, "Come back where?" She said, "Come back to Donaldsonville. We got room out here." you know, and come on back to Donaldsonville. Everything is all right down here. So that's what we did. We turned around. We had 4.5 feet of water on the first floor of both houses. Our use of syncopation, of allowing space between the notes, I believe separates what we play here in New Orleans versus what gets played everywhere else. So I believe that's, you know, that's what, if that's the thing that makes it identified as funk, then that's what it'd be. I would have to say syncopation is the word that's missing from the concept of funk. You know, I'm a gig until I really can't anymore. I don't foresee, you know, I mean, I might spend more time in the studio producing and writing and stuff. I'm not gonna say, but I'm not gonna stop gigging. No, I'm still having too much fun doing this. You know, I still like playing.